Welcome into Three True Values. I'm your host, James Fletcher, and we are back with you on the first full day of NCAA tournament action. Yes, that's right. We have 16 games lined up on today's slate, 16 more scheduled for Friday. So you are going to get your fix on all things college basketball here in the coming days. Of course, that's followed up with Saturday and Sunday. We have 8 games each. So still a big slate of games for you to watch. This is the best weekend in the college sports calendar. It's the best weekend in the world, really, if we look at it in its totality. We get so much college basketball. We're going to have, of course, the top contenders. We're going to see them put up big performances early on. We're going to have the start of some March Madness storylines. You know that we're going to get, whether it's some fans who go viral, whether it's a player who makes a big time shot. We're going to have things that we're talking about this time next week that we didn't even know were on the horizon. But we do have some people that we know we're going to be talking about. We've got some freshmen in this class who are looking to write their legacy in the college game before heading off to the NBA. You've got a group of seniors looking to go out on a high note before moving on from college basketball. Some coaches who are looking to break through the ceiling and reach the highest points in this sport. We are going to break down all of it throughout today's show. Here in the first segment, we are going to talk about a little bit of what has already happened. We're going to break down the play-in games, particularly the 11 seed play-in games that took place in Dayton. I do have a lot to say about SMU versus Miami, Ohio. We'll talk also about Texas taking on NC State, what happened there, but we will focus primarily on SMU and the BJ Edwards situation. In the second segment, we're going to come back and we're going to take you through some of the big storylines that you need to be watching on day one, that you're going to want to keep an eye out on, that you're going to want to follow as the NCAA tournament continues. And in the third segment, we'll wrap things up. We'll do the same thing with Friday's slate. We'll talk about what you need to watch in that second day of NCAA tournament action as we get to kind of do it all over again, what we're going to experience today, getting a full slate of games from start to finish, 4 screens, and just so much great content. That does it for the introductions. And so let's get into it. Let's talk about these games that set the round of 64. Of course, we had the 16 seed games where Prairie View A&M pulled off a little bit of an upset against Lehigh. We also saw Howard take down UMBC. So 2 HBCUs make the field of 64, something that has not been super common because we've honestly seen the SWAC champion and the MEAC champion go up against each other in these play-in games multiple times. They've often been both in these play-ins, even if they weren't playing against each other. So good to see both of them make it into the NCAA tournament field here in the first round. They will both have to go up against 1 seeds, of course. Prairie View playing Florida on tomorrow's schedule, and Michigan facing Howard. That will be today. We will get to see Howard in action during the Thursday slate. But we're going to focus here primarily on these 11 seed matchups, the last 4 in, as the selection committee named them. As we know, Miami, Ohio was the lowest seeded team in the bracket, but not the last team in. SMU was the last team that the selection committee put into the tournament field. They were chosen ahead of Oklahoma and Auburn, the first 2 teams that missed the NCAA tournament cut line. As we know, Oklahoma was a team that got hot late, won a couple of games into the NCAA or the SEC tournament, after closing the regular season pretty strongly. On the other side, you had an Auburn team that was 500, but their analytics were pretty good. They were both pushed to the side for SMU in what was pretty unanimously viewed as the right call, particularly with the understanding that Miami, Ohio, with a 31-0 regular season, with the resume that they had, the wins above bubble metric, which was so far above the rest of the bubble teams. Yes, their KenPom was lower. Yes, their net ranking was lower than those that they were being compared to, but strength of record was also high. So the resume metrics told you outside of the quadrant system, that one they did not have the opportunities to pick up quad one and quad two games. But the analytics that go along with your resume, those suggested that Miami, Ohio did belong in the field. So once you got them in the field, because there were some still doubters, some people who said they didn't belong based on the strength of schedule. After that debate, once we put them in the field, it came down to SMU and their really bad close to the season, losing 4 of 5, a real skid into the ACC tournament, not able to really get anything done without BJ Edwards, who was a key piece on this team. A guard who not only provides you scoring punch, not only is part of what keeps that offense going, is probably their best defender, at least on the perimeter. A guy who can guard the other team's best player, who can really give you a chance on both ends of the floor and make a major impact. So for him to be out was significant. And that was taken into account by the NCAA tournament's selection committee. Not only in evaluating SMU, but evaluating teams that had beaten SMU as well. We saw NC State fall into the last four in part based on the fact that their win against SMU carried less weight than it otherwise would have if they had been at full strength. So the selection committee strongly considered the BJ Edwards injury. In fact, committee chair Keith Gill said on the record that it was one of the determining factors in SMU making the field over Oklahoma. And I would share that sentiment. When I had SMU listed in the field, the reason that I not only had them in the field, but had them one spot above Texas, I had Texas as the last team in. Of course, we know they were the second to last to make it into this field, or the third to last, excuse me. NC State, which was punished for the strength of their win against SMU, was second to last. So, as you look through it, that BJ Edwards injury and the understanding after a statement was released by the school that he would participate in the NCAA tournament was what got SMU into the field and what kept Oklahoma out of the field. I would agree with that in my bracketology findings. It is very concerning that he then does not play the first four games. For him to not go out there against Miami, Ohio, 2 hours before tip-off, be hit with an announcement that he will not participate, I think that it deserves a deeper look. If I am the NCAA, I believe you need to take a stand here. We know that the NCAA has taken hits left and right, all kinds of things, NIL, transfer portal, just all over the place, antitrust lawsuits. This is cut and dry. This is simple. Injury reports and injury updates are part of the integrity of sports. And so if they were to find that BJ Edwards on Saturday night, when that statement was revealed, when they told the selection committee, in your deliberations, account for BJ Edwards being back and available in the NCAA tournament. When that happened, they put themselves in a real serious position. And if we were to find out that they lied, or at best, deliberately misled the selection committee, that deserves punishment. I would go as far to say beyond even fines. I think this is the type of thing that if the NCAA is being serious and it finds any shred of evidence that BJ Edwards was not healthy and was not expected to be available, and that's where it gets difficult, and we'll break that down in just a second. But if that evidence is out there, this is the type of thing that would be deserving of a postseason ban. You cheated your way into the field. Well, now you don't get the right to play in the field. Now, I am not coming down fully that that is my stance, that that should happen, because it's very difficult to prove. There is still the opportunity, the chance that SMU believed he would be available and things changed. I think, though, that if that was the case, SMU owed more transparency. There should have been an earlier announcement than just before the injury report. There should have been further explanation than what Andy Enfield gave last night after the game, basically saying that we just didn't feel he was ready to go. Well, you told us he was ready to go. So how does he days later get to a point where he's no longer ready to go? This is very serious. In a world where we have sports gambling at the level that we do, the amount of money that is put on these things, how serious we take it. We've had college sports, we've had professional sports with serious scandals, the FBI involved over fixing results. Well, this is fixing results to its core if they lie about an injury to make it into the field and then don't reveal the injury until hours before their next game. That's twofold. And so I think that they got what they deserved in losing to Miami, Ohio. And it's a shame that I'm having to lead and start off the show with this conversation because Miami, Ohio, turning around from a 31-0 season, no quad one wins, picked apart for their resume on national TV, have Bruce Pearl and others basically saying they don't deserve it regardless of what they do. They will never deserve to be in the NCAA tournament field. To have them respond to that, bounce back and really respond from their first loss of the season, and to go out here and beat an SMU team that, yes, is significantly worse without BJ Edwards, but is still a power conference team, a quad one win on a neutral floor, is beyond impressive. And they deserve their own segment. They deserve their own show. To move to 32-0, to make it into the field, they're going to play Tennessee tomorrow. Another chance to be on the biggest stage with Travis Steele leading them as the coach. Miami, Ohio is a great story, and it's been overshadowed by SMU because of injury speculation. And so they got what they deserved. Miami, Ohio got what they deserved. We can end the debate about whether Miami, Ohio belongs in this field. And we can start questioning whether SMU ever belonged in this NCAA tournament. We do have to, before we move to the next segment, talk just briefly here about NC State taking on Texas. The Longhorns come away with the win. And there's a couple of talking points from this one. The first one being that, yes, this was a rematch of the regular season, and it went the other way. And if you follow sports where this is more common for teams to match up multiple times, whether that's baseball, you see it in the NBA, if we're going to stick with basketball, it's hard to sweep a series against the same team because they now have seen what you're going to do. They're going to respond. They're going to have some extra motivation saying, hey, they got us last time. We've got to make sure we get them this time. I think that beyond that, though, this NC State team had just kind of hit a skid. They weren't the team that they had been building up towards early in the season. Some struggles early, had kind of gotten it figured out. You felt like they were on the right trajectory. They were moving forward. And then it kind of just fell off, and there were hits and misses. A lot more misses than there were hits, though, for that team down the stretch of the regular season and into the conference tournament. And, of course, now the NCAA tournament. So Will Wade is done in his inaugural season with NC State. Had some pretty strong words saying that it was a disappointing season, that it will be the worst season that he has at NC State. This, of course, comes amid all the speculation that was bound to be out there, as LSU still with no indication on the future of their head coaching position with Matt McMahon and the obvious history with Will Wade. We'll see if that develops into anything. He said that he's still focused on this team right now. There was no real denial there, though, that there would be interest from either side on that opening. But Sean Miller created his own headline after the game. Xavier fans obviously making a short trip down to Dayton in order to kind of jeer their former coach, two-time former coach, really. Started at Xavier, moved to Arizona after being caught on a wiretap involving the FBI investigation into illegally paying players. He lost that position, ends up back at Xavier, has more success for a second go around, and then leaves again for Texas. So these fans kind of feeling like they've been left behind twice by this coach. They decide to make the trip down, and they heckled him for a good part of the game, even after the win. Sean Miller, though, gets into some hot water because video has emerged of him doing a horns down and then throwing an X. And I've seen this kind of get picked up and become a thing with Texas fans, with their rivals, with Xavier fans. I don't think there's a lot to it. I think he was trash talking back and forth. Somebody makes a hand motion, you make a hand motion back, and then you kind of, no. And I don't, there was nothing there. I know that they get real sensitive about horns down, but there just wasn't much of a storyline there to me. The storyline is that they're through to the next round and they will be taking on AJ DeBonsa and BYU during today's slate of NCAA tournament games. When we come back on the other side, we'll talk a little bit more about that game and some of the other storylines you need to be watching right here on Three True Values. Welcome back in here on Three True Values as we continue rolling through this show. We're going to go pretty quick here because we've already gone through all of our bracket picks. So you know some of the upset teams that you should be watching for. You know some of the storylines that are on the table. We spent a good chunk of our time talking about that first four. And so as you go through Thursday's schedule, just going to hit you with a couple of things that you should be watching for, not just today, but through the course of this NCAA tournament. I think that Jon Scheyer is a big story. Number one overall seed Duke, of course, should breeze through Thursday's game, but it is the start of what could be a very important NCAA tournament run for Jon Scheyer. In 4 seasons, he's done historic things as a head coach, as we know, taking over for Mike Krzyzewski. He has really gotten off to a fast start between the recruiting, the roster building that he's been able to do, how he's implemented the transfer portal in a pretty unique way to surround his star player with the exact type of fits that they need around them. He has become one of the best in the business at all of those things. We know that his X's and O's are just at the top of the game. And these last 2 years, it has been proven. I mean, 1 seeds, back-to-back seasons. And if you look at his NCAA tournament resume, the only thing left for him to prove is that he can win a national championship. He has gone in his first season, bow out in the second round. Next season, he makes a run all the way to the Elite Eight. Last year, it was a Final Four run for Duke. They made it all the way into the final weekend. So what happens this year? He's improved every single season. 1 year, he made a leap 2 rounds in advance. Since then, 1 round at a time. Will it be one more step and he makes it to the national championship game and takes a loss? Or will he jump 1 step again and win it all this season? That's what's on the line for Jon Scheyer. I think that he's got the team to do it. Cameron Boozer, as we know, so efficient. He has been the best college basketball player this season, has not been particularly close to this point. They've beaten probably the other favorite at this point, Michigan. So for them to be able to go out and get that done, I think that that's already going to show that they should be the heavy favorite as they are, despite a tough East region draw. They could go up against a UConn or a Michigan State. They will before that have to face a St. John's or a Kansas. This is not some easy run through, but I do think they're good enough. They've proven that with their overall record that they are going to make it. Don't forget that the only two teams all season that have beat them are also now without their star players. No JT Toppin for Texas Tech anymore. No Caleb Wilson for UNC. So I don't think that even the teams that have proven they could beat Duke could beat them at this point in the season. Can anyone? That's what we're going to find out in this run. And as we know, you're already going to have a baseline of people rooting against you as the Duke head coach. We know that you're going to have a baseline rooting against you because you were the hand-picked successor to Mike Krzyzewski. You're going to have a handful that always view you as the Duke white guy. We always know. There's always one out there. But there's going to be more people who are going to pick you apart, who are going to question your credentials, wrongfully so in the case of Jon Scheyer, but they're going to do it the longer you go without a national championship. And yes, it took Mike Krzyzewski 11 years. Look at how deep into John Calipari's career he won his first national championship. Bill Self, it took him a long time. He started to face some criticism. So did John. But it takes time. It doesn't take time for people to develop an opinion or at least to start trolling you. Particularly when you've had Cooper Flagg last year, when you have Cameron Boozer this year, when they see that level of talent, the expectation is you're going to win it all. Even though, as we know, the NCAA tournament is not that cut and dry. It's not just that the best player wins every season. There are all kinds of twists and turns. It's all about matchups. It's all about timing. Duke has some injuries right now. Can they survive? Get at least Pat Ngongba back, potentially Caleb Foster down the road in the late stages? Can they get a boost from those guys who are filling in those roles? That's what's going to matter for Duke as they embark on this national championship run. AJ DeBonsa, as we know, going to be a big storyline, particularly here today. He plays during the Thursday slate, taking on Texas. And this is going to be a good matchup for him. Dalen Swain, not necessarily considered a top 10 level prospect in this class, but is a first round level prospect, going to go head to head against AJ DeBonsa. And so we'll see, can he guard what has been the best scorer in college basketball, something that we don't often say from a player that's playing at the Power 5 level, to be able to score almost 2 points more per game than anyone else in the country. What AJ DeBonsa is doing is incredible for a wing scorer to go out there and put up that kind of production, to really drag his team to success also. Ever since the Richie Saunders injury, this team has been up and down, very inconsistent results. They just don't have enough firepower. They rely on DeBonsa to put up at least those 25 points, if not more, to keep them in games very often during this back portion of the season. And so for AJ DeBonsa, can he continue to deliver? Can he go out there and play 38, 40 minutes of really solid basketball once again? That's what we're going to find out. And it's just fitting that they're playing up against Texas here. DeBonsa has said that Kevin Durant is his basketball idol, the guy that he looks up to. Now, as the next great wing scorer who's about to enter the NBA, he gets to face Kevin Durant's alma mater. Darius Acuff, another freshman who you need to keep your eyes on. This guy has been electric. Since the start of February, he is shooting 51% from the three-point line. And not only that, he seems like he hits every clutch shot. And that's what you're looking for. We've seen this lineage of player. Think about the great March Madness runs. Who are you thinking about? You're thinking about Kemba Walker. You're thinking about Shabazz Napier, those UConn teams, led by a star point guard who made the biggest shots imaginable, the most clutch moments on the court. You think about Jimmer Fredette and Steph Curry, two guys who just burst onto the scene and up draft boards. You think about even the Derrick Roses, who rose to number one in that draft class, really kickstarted everything by hitting another gear in the NCAA tournament. A Ja Morant, who came from Murray State and with electric highlights and big time shots in the NCAA tournament, was able to build up his brand into a number two pick behind only Zion Williamson, who was the biggest thing going in the sport at that time. This is the time for dynamic, big time point guards to make a name for themselves. Darius Akoff has an opportunity to become a household name. He's already in this conversation. People are putting him up there with the best John Calipari guards of all time, an exclusive list. Rose, we just mentioned. Think about John Wall. You talk about the guys who maybe didn't have the same level of college success in terms of their winning, but still have gone on to have incredible NBA careers. Devin Booker, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Darius Akoff has the opportunity to be the same level of household name as all of those people that I just mentioned. It's just going to take a couple of wins, a couple of big shots over the next few weeks here in the NCAA tournament. And one last thing that you need to be watching during today's slate here on Thursday is Nebraska ball. 130 years this program has been going, since the 1800s. And they have not won an NCAA tournament game. 0-8 all time. First NCAA tournament appearance came in the late 80s. Weren't able to get it done. They made it back. They were a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. They got upset by a 14. Lost to Xavier in the early 90s. Then went 3 more times consecutively. So 4 straight NCAA tournament appearances during that 90s run. Lost in the first round every single time. Didn't make it back after the 90s until 2014. Quickly bowed out. They made it again in 2024. Fred Hoiberg has got this thing headed in the right direction. They traveled, I was there, by the thousands to see Nebraska take on Texas A&M in the first round there in Memphis. And they took a 15-point loss. Just devastating. Last year they missed the tournament, but they win the crown. They got some postseason winning under their belt. They remembered what it felt like. And now this year, they start the season 20-0, one of the longest win streaks in college basketball all season. And here they are facing Troy. Troy, who looks like a pretty lively 13 seed. I just can't bear to pick against them. I can't bear to pick this upset. I have to pick Nebraska to win this. I could pick apart this matchup all day and tell you about how size has given them a little bit of trouble. Troy has great size for a mid-major team. They've got a guy in Thomas Dowd who can definitely create problems. But I'm not picking against Nebraska. I'm not doing it. They have to get their first NCAA tournament win. They have to get it done. Break the streak. 130 years. It's been long enough. The drought has to end sometime. When we come back on the other side, we'll talk you through some of the storylines that you need to be watching on Friday during the NCAA tournament, right here on 3 True Values. Welcome back in here as we wrap up today's episode of 3 True Values with Friday's must-watch events, what you should keep your eyes on across the NCAA tournament bracket. So we're going to kind of keep things rolling here. Now, this one, yes, we're going to expect them to win. But I think it's important to continue to watch Arizona because, as we know, the long-standing history of West Coast teams not getting it done, West Coast teams not winning a national title in X amount of years. But Arizona is the real deal. And they're not just the real deal. We've seen the highs from Duke. We've seen the hot points from Michigan. We've even seen Florida have their own high points. Houston throughout the season. We've seen what Purdue can do recently from that 2 seed spot. Iowa State has shown us flashes. But no team in this top tier has felt just as methodical as Arizona. They have star freshmen. Braden Burries is putting up big numbers. Koa Pete is having an outstanding season. But there's nothing remarkable there. There's no Cam Boozer where the analytics are so off the charts that we've never seen this before. There's no AJ DeBonsa where we've just seen very few wings who have the fluidity and scoring punch. There's not a Darren Peterson where he's electric in flashes, but can he hold on? The Darius Acuff moments of brilliance. It's some veterans in Jaden Bradley and Anthony Delorso, Matias Krivas, and then you surround them with some really plug and play freshmen. Burries and Pete. Kurchenkov has come into the mix. Dwayne Aristode has been just a cog in this whole machine. How often do you actually talk about his game? But he's part of that rotation when healthy and just kind of mows along. Not putting up big stat lines. Braden Burry's putting up the biggest stats, really, of that group. Jaden Bradley putting up some really nice stats as well, but there's nothing outstanding going on. But these guys play incredibly well together. They are a unit. As a rotation, they have great chemistry. And they have just mowed through this season quietly and consistently. Really, one bad week. That's all they've had. They had 1 week. They've dealt with injuries. They've just overcome them and kept moving on. Arizona is going to really test things. Can they just steadily make their way through? Or do they come up against one of these mercurial stars and just not have that next year? That's what we're going to find out. Darius Acuff at Arkansas could be the first chance for us to test that theory. You could also see it going up against Purdue and Braden Smith. He's a different kind of star for sure, but a college basketball star nonetheless, the accomplishments that he has. You look at if they potentially faced a Michigan, what they bring to the table, and a Duke on the other side of this bracket. There's some real interesting tests ahead for Arizona. We're going to find out a lot about this team during this NCAA tournament run. The second storyline that we have to be watching on Friday is Darren Peterson and his ongoing perception battle. Because early on, with electric performances, with the fluidity of his game, the ability to get to spots, handle the ball, he had, in some people's eyes, passed AJ DeBonsa. People said that you can't pass on a guard with this much size, who can control the game, who can shoot that fluidly. And his three-point shot is beautiful, and it goes in at a very high clip. But then the cramping started, and he missed some games, and he would check out midway through a game. And then there was an illness, and Bill Self didn't seem to indicate he really supported sitting out with that illness. And it built up this angst. And suddenly people were questioning this kid's heart. I'm among them, not trying to absolve myself of this. You have to, when you see all the other players, all the other star freshmen in particular, going out and seemingly responding to the Darren Peterson drama and intrigue by talking about how much they love their college teammates, how much they would die on this court. They want to play 40 minutes. They want the longest season possible so they can rack up minutes, rack up this production. Where Darren Peterson seemed very comfortable to get his points and check out of the game and sit on the end of the bench. Now, he has since corrected a lot of this. He has told his story about being hospitalized with full body cramps, which does explain some. I don't think it explains everything. I think there's a lot still out there. There's still some red flags that NBA teams are going to vet during the draft process, and we'll see if they feel comfortable with them. I still wasn't a fan of his comment about being an antisocial loner. I just don't think that's what you're looking for in the NBA draft with the number 1 pick. You're looking for a franchise cornerstone, somebody who's going to be in the public eye 24/7, who needs to have the ability to respond to that, to handle scrutiny, to be the public eye, to be the face of the franchise to the fans and to your teammates. So there's still some more to unpack with him, but to get him on the court and producing consistently is the first big step. Now, since he has played more minutes and more games consistently, the efficiency has dropped. And that's what he's got to work on. This is going to be a big opportunity going up against a Cal Baptist team that has some dynamic scoring guards, but shouldn't be able to guard him in any meaningful way. They're too little to match up against Darren Peterson. Can he have an efficient performance with no setbacks? That would go a long way into the next round, facing up against St. John's, a bigger stage, two big teams. That would give him the platform to then go into that game, prove himself. Because it's only going to take 3-4 games here in this NCAA tournament run of consistent, efficient performances that are drama-free to completely flip the narrative. This is when the most eyes are on you. This is when people care the most about whether you show up. If he can show up in these moments, he can completely change this narrative and he can get back up into that top pick conversation, which he hasn't fallen completely out of, but it does seem like perhaps AJ DeBonsa has surpassed him in a lot of people's minds. It looks like Cam Boozer is right there with him now in a lot of people's minds. So this NCAA tournament run, very important for his perception and his continued battle to win back the fans after getting the nickname DNP. We'll see how he's able to do that here over the coming days. Storyline number 3 that you need to watch on Friday is a little bit of Friday night maction. That's right. Usually reserved for football played during the midweek slate that we aren't really too thrilled about, but it's on TV. We're getting a very rare Maction day in the NCAA tournament. 2 MAC teams will face off in the same quadrant of the bracket there in the Midwest. You will have Miami, Ohio, we talked about in the first segment, taking on Tennessee. This is a big opportunity for the Red Hawks. They get a win against SMU. They for sure stamped and really kind of proved their worthiness to be in this NCAA tournament field. Now, can you go make a run? Can you become the Cinderella team? They'll face a Tennessee team that really needs Nate Ament to step up. They need him to be more consistent and really take on the role of leader. He's been a little bit too passive all season long. This is the time for him to step up and make a run if Tennessee is going to do big things in this tournament. If not, we'll see if Miami, Ohio can catch them at the right time. Akron also playing on the same day. They're going to face Texas Tech, a Texas Tech team that is without JT Toppin, that has struggled mightily since their star player went down. They also have Christian Anderson, who went down in the Big 12 tournament on that slick floor. We'll see how close to 100% he is. I believe he'll play, but I don't know that he's going to be at full capacity. That could really change things. Lawan Watts also fell during that Big 12 tournament. Is he going to be 100%? That's to be determined as we see them in action on Friday. This could be a major opportunity for an Akron team that went way too far under the radar as one of the best mid-major teams in college basketball because of the Miami, Ohio story. Look, if you look in the analytic models, Akron is actually ranked higher than Miami, Ohio. They're also on one of the longest win streaks in the country right now. They have been putting up really solid results. Their only 2 losses really since the turn of the calendar have come against 2 NCAA tournament teams in Troy and Miami, Ohio. So this is a team that has a lot going for it entering this. I think that they're a very lively upset pick. You know that I have them going in my bracket. So watch out. It could be a huge Friday slate for the MAC, which is now a 2-bid league. And finally, we'll wrap things up here, questioning what the reaction will be from Big Blue Nation. If they lose in this first round against Santa Clara, it is going to be a very interesting offseason for that Kentucky program. Some boos throughout the season for the home team inside Rupp Arena. just all over the place. You've had, yes, injury plagued season, but some of that should have been expected, right? Jaden Quaintance was coming off of an ACL tear. You knew that he wasn't going to be at 100% probably for the whole season, that he wasn't even going to enter the lineup until midway through the season. You also have seen Jalen Lowe have some injury problems in his past. So he suffers another shoulder injury. He's out of the picture. This is a team that just has not clicked. Mark Pope has been looking for answers, what seems like all season. He hasn't found a lot of them. Otega Owe has kind of dragged this team the best he could at certain points. They have Cam Williams back now. We'll see how much of an impact that makes. But this is a really lively Santa Clara team. Their first bid to the NCAA tournament in 30 years. They've been on the bubble quite a few times in recent memory. But a team with Alan Graves, who is an analytics darling, people love the production that he has, the impact on winning that he has shown. This is a Santa Clara team that's also coming off of some good performances. Sure, they lost to Gonzaga in the West Coast Conference final, but they beat St. Mary's coming into that. So this is a Santa Clara team that can beat a team of the same caliber that Kentucky has been all season. And like I said, Alan Graves, Elijah Mahi, you look at Christian Hammond and his scoring output so far this season. Terry Darlin has not put up big stat lines, but a guy who's been around, who knows how to play in big moments. This is an interesting matchup to me. I'm going with Santa Clara, another one of these upset picks that I have. And prepare yourself for the offseason if Big Blue Nation sees themselves go out in the first round of the NCAA tournament. We will be back next week to take you through all of these storylines and plenty more that are going to develop over the coming days. I will have live coverage from Tampa on Friday and Sunday, so don't miss any of that. You can catch me at JDFletch3 on Twitter to follow all of my work. Obviously, posting more for On 3 over the next few days as well. So stay locked in there. Stay tuned for more updates next week. We will be getting you ready for the second weekend, the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 of the NCAA tournament right here on 3 True Values.